Hello and welcome to the Bundesliga show, the match day 29 prediction show. Yeah, it's already match day 29, incredibly, in this Bundesliga season. We mentioned it on Monday, Cam, didn't we? And it's just going so fast, isn't it? It's just flying by, yeah. But yeah, obviously you're going to be over in Germany this weekend too, aren't you? So have you got any plans when you're over there?
Just get there. I mean, it's supposed to be sunny this weekend, so yeah, just chill really. But next weekend, I'm back down in Freiburg covering their game against Hoffenheim, which is quite mad to be honest, because the last Freiburg game I was at was match day 1, which just puts everything into perspective of how quickly this season seems to have just flown by, to be honest.
Yeah, it's just incredible, isn't it? Yeah, time flies. It really does. I mean, it can't be as good as the weather here in the UK. I'm still amazed by the fact that the weather's been so good over here this last 10 days. I don't know what it's been like there in the Midlands, but here in the Northwest, it's been like Mallorca, basically.
I know.
It's incredible.
Just before we started recording, I was sat outside and I was like, do I have to go back into the house?
Yeah. Maybe you can get a better Wi-Fi and then do it from outside next time.
That's it.
It's incredible, really. Yeah, really is. But yeah, we've got to talk Bundesliga for the next half an hour or so. And obviously we've got a lot of interesting games, right into the business end of the season now, isn't it? We've got a kind of title race, you could say. Obviously, we're buying 6 points clear going into the final 6 games. We've got a crazy European race, which is just, hotting up week on week, really, isn't it? And then a relegation battle, which is always interesting, isn't failing to disappoint again this season. So, yeah, let's have a look at the fixtures. So we already kick off with a pretty interesting one, don't we? Obviously, Wolfsburg against Leipzig. It's 2 company clubs. It's kind of Volkswagen against Red Bull. This one, I always like to say that for the company clubs in a way. But yeah, it's but it is, it's 2 big clubs nowadays, really, well backed financially. Sometimes lacking the support, one would say, but definitely not lacking financial support for these 2 clubs. But obviously, it's 2 teams that are relatively off form in general, really. Obviously, Wolfsburg have had a wretched run, haven't they? Being turned over by Union last week, and the last home game was that shocking defeat at home to Heidenheim as well. So they're on a really poor run. Hasenhüttl is supposedly under a little bit of pressure as well, which is disappointing because I feel as though overall he's done a decent job, but 12th place going into the last 6 games, it's not good enough, really. That's the problem. But they do have a good record against Leipzig. That's the advantage for them at the minute. They did beat them 5-1 at Leipzig earlier in the season in one of the kind of shocks of the year, really. Yeah. Obviously, Zsolt Low has had a decent start. They beat Hoffenheim 3-1, but I think you said correctly, Cam, on Monday that you can't read too much into that because, they should be beating teams like Hoffenheim at home. This is a much tougher fixture against a team that they don't traditionally do well against in recent years. So this is a tough one to tip, but I'm actually kind of expecting that Wolfsburg might come a little bit better in this game, actually. I've had a bit of a think over this one, and I'm actually quite fancying the chances of Wolfsburg here because they do tend to do better against the bigger teams in my eyes. But it's not an easy one to tip, but I've actually gone for a 2-1 home win here. A little bit of a shock to start us off. But I just feel as though Leipzig are so inconsistent that it's tough to tip them away from home in this kind of game. What are you going for, Cam?
I actually, as we seem to do all the time, me and you, I actually said the exact same. I just think that you mentioned about beating the big teams. I remember when just after they beat Stuttgart and I looked at their fixtures and I said it on Monday, these could be the favourites to sort of claim maybe 5th place and possibly even push into the top 4. Yeah. But then that wretched run comes against teams that they should be on paper winning against. And you mentioned Hasenhüttl and his job, and I think it just shows how ruthless the mid-table of the Bundesliga can be. That it's never a given if you're going to beat these sides at the end of the day, even your Heidenheims who are struggling down the bottom. Sorry. So, but I just think that run's got to come to an end at some point. Leipzig are inconsistent, and I don't think last weekend is a way to really judge them. So, yeah, I'm going to go for a 2-1 home win. I just think that run has to come to an end at some point, and this weekend will be the one.
Yeah, definitely, but definitely an interesting kind of curtain raiser for the weekend. So yeah, moving on to the Saturday games, we got Leverkusen Union Berlin, which is another interesting one. But I'm going to give you the honours, Cam, and let you lead out for this one.
Yeah, I mean, Leverkusen have to win, don't they? Really, if they want to keep their title hopes alive, this could be the weekend that if something mad happens in Munich when Bayern play Dortmund, the gap could be back down to 3 points at the end of the weekend. So I think Leverkusen will go into this weekend feeling confident, knowing that something could happen in that sense. And I just don't see Union having enough to come up with anything at the Bayern Arena, to be honest. Even though Union have shown glimpses this season, I must admit. But I just think Leverkusen have far too much quality, alongside the fact that their title hopes could possibly get a big boost with the game at the Allianz Arena. So I'm going to go for a 3-1 home win.
Yeah, definitely. I think obviously it is a game where Leverkusen are hot favourites to win it. Definitely they have a good record against Union over recent years. But I do feel as though Union are definitely playing better. If you look at some of the results in recent weeks, like they turned Frankfurt over in Frankfurt, which was a real marquee win for them, really.
They were massively impressive that day as well, I thought.
They were. And let's not forget, they also turned Freiburg over in Breisgau as well. So they won the last two on the road at Frankfurt and Freiburg, respectively. So, and then they beat Wolfsburg, which is another solid win at home. So they are definitely on form, and they also drew with Bayern too in rather impressive fashion. So they've got 10 points from the last 4, and it's not been an easy run. So it's definitely not a complete banker, this one. But you're right. I think Leverkusen, they got away with one last week against Heidenheim, didn't they? And I think Xabi will have kind of, knocked them down after that and kind of said, look, you've got to do better if we want to stay in this title race. But yeah, they've got the advantage this one. They start the weekend, they play before Bayern. So I feel as though that always gives a kind of opportunity really to put the pressure on. And for me, I agree that they'll get a win. I think it's going to be a 2-0 win, a rare clean sheet this season for Leverkusen. And they'll keep the title race open for another week, potentially. So let's move on to another one. We got another interesting game, really. Obviously, Hoffenheim against Mainz 05. Hoffenheim, what can you say? It's just been a non-starter of a season, hasn't it? I mean, Ilse just seems to kind of scrape through every week just about in a job, really, doesn't he? Whether he'll be able to see out the season or even more doubtful is like whether he'll see it into the start of next season is another matter. But Mainz obviously have got problems of their own at the minute. Like they had a very disappointing draw against Kiel last week in a game where everyone thought they had to win, really. But they didn't play badly in that game. That was the problem. I think they hit the post 3 times and they did create bags of chances in what was a really entertaining fixture. So I'm still looking at the away side as the favourites in this one, especially after what we've seen from Hoffenheim for a few weeks now, really. So I am going to go for an away win here. I think it's going to be a 2-1 Mainz win. What are you thinking, Cam?
Yeah, I went for 2-0 for basically the same reasons that you said. I mean, Hoffenheim, you've said it's, a non-starter of a season. It's not just that. They haven't shown any signs of starting up, have they? There's not even been any performances that you look at and go, oh, that could turn things around here.
Yeah.
Been a complete dismal year since day one, really. And Mainz obviously dropped points in the last 2. I think they'll be sort of the pressure's on them now to get another win, really cement that place back in the top 4. So I'm going to go for an away win, and I've gone for 2-0. I just think that, it's the pressure's on them now, and it's up to them to really compete again. And I think Henriksen's the right man to get them doing that. So 2-0, and
Yeah, definitely. I mean, if they can win this game, they'll be looking pretty again in that top 4, especially with difficult games for Leipzig and Gladbach as well, which we'll talk about in a minute. But I mean, a win there, and they'll still be looking very pretty for top 4 going into the last 4 or 5 games of the season, really. Although they do have some tricky ones in that last 5 as well, including the likes of Bayern and Leverkusen. They still have to play, so it's definitely not easy.
It just makes this weekend all the more important, doesn't it? Really, ahead of those fixtures, get some confidence back in the group and just get back in the groove. Really, ahead of, as you say, some more difficult fixtures.
Yeah, for me, I think you are looking at, like, if they want to get that top 4, they kind of need to win this one. You can't afford to drop points against both Kiel and Hoffenheim for me in a row. They need to get a win, and then it's okay. 4 points from 2, it's still decent against any opposition, ultimately. So, yeah, we'll have to see, but definitely both tipping Mainz to win that one in Hoffenheim. So, yeah, an interesting game. The next one up, Cam, I'm going to let you lead out for Gladbach Freiburg.
Yeah, I mean, we said on Monday, Gladbach got what they deserved against St. Pauli in the end, didn't they? It took a while, but they did. And how do we say it every week? But it depends on which version of the hosts turn up, I guess. And at the minute, things have fallen back into that sort of downtrodden form. But then we know that they can just flick a switch, and then they look like one of the best sides in the league again, like the side that turned over Heidenheim just under a month ago, wasn't it, or something like that. And then Freiburg, yeah, again, just sort of slip into that mid-table side that we sort of expected back in January, February time as the more difficult fixtures approach. But I don't think you can count out either side in this fixture, really. I think it's genuinely going to be one of those games that is a flip of a coin sort of thing. So I think personally, I've gone for a 1-1 draw, but it could go either way for me.
Yeah, I mean, it's a pretty important one as well. If you look at the table, these two teams sitting still pretty in the European positions, providing that, obviously you would still expect seventh will go to the league ultimately. Although that's a little bit more doubtful now after the shock Pokal results. But, you'd still be relatively confident of qualifying for the Conference League if you finish seventh, wouldn't you?
Yeah, absolutely.
But yeah, I mean, this is going to be a key game. I mean, both of these teams maybe are a little bit too far back for Champions League, but especially Gladbach will think if they can win this one with a couple of results going their way, top four still isn't out of the question. Yeah. For me, they've really improved defensively. I've been impressed with the defensive effort from Gladbach, especially Itakura is really
fantastic. Yeah.
He's going to be the next one potentially linked for a big move to the Premier League or whatever, but he's really impressed me. I think Ulrich as well, the young left back has been good. Even Joe Scally has kind of, solidified his performance more and become a little bit more consistent. So I think the defense has almost been more impressive than the attack at times from Gladbach, which is rare because normally you think, Gladbach are a good attacking side, but a bit suspect defensively. As for Freiburg, I just feel as though they're one of those teams that they're a bit limited ultimately. I think they're too reliant on set plays in my eyes. They really, so many of the goals come from, those Grifo free kicks or Doan, kind of goals from a free kick or something, or corner goals from the likes of Gunter and Kubler. And I feel as though from open play, they are missing something. Maybe they need to get Röhl involved a little bit more too, because I feel as though he's a real playmaker.
Yeah.
But he's not been quite as influential as I expected this season. But they could do with him because he's the kind of guy that can dribble, can't he? So,
when I saw him on match day one in person, it was unbelievable. He was everywhere. Yeah. And I think Freiburg, they had so much energy that day, but I think they're a side that relies on sort of momentum in games. Yeah. As soon as they took the lead against Stuttgart, they looked like a side that you would expect to be up there. Yeah. And you watch them in some games, it's just so slow and so drab, really. Yeah. But I remember us mentioning it before about the possibility of things being a bit samey at Freiburg because it's majority, massively the same squad, really, compared to the side that was in Europe a few seasons ago, really, and the one that made it to the cup final. Yeah. The lineup hasn't changed that much, has it?
No, it's not at all.
And I think that can play a factor. Teams know how to play against you now, and teams know how to play against Freiburg, and they're thinking, limit the set pieces, and we could pick up a result here. And I just think that, as you say, if you're too reliant on those moments of Grifo magic or Doan, it can end up, hitting you in the backside a few times.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, but so it is an interesting contrast of styles, obviously. But I'm actually going to stick with the home side here. I felt as though they disappointed a little bit last week against Pauli, and we're probably lucky to pick up a point in that one, to be honest. Even though they were leading till quite late on, I felt as though Pauli were definitely the better side. But ultimately, they got away with a point. It's not a terrible result. But they'd won, I think, 3 in a row before that. So, but I'm going to go for a 1-0 home win here. I don't think there'll be bags of goals because there's a lot of pressure on this game as well. The winner will be looking good for Europe at the very least. For me, Gladbach are just about the better team out of these two, and I'm going to go for a 1-0 home win here for the Borussia. So yeah, let's move on. Let's go to an interesting one as well at the bottom of the league, obviously for the home side, VfL Bochum versus Augsburg. So yeah, I mean, Bochum are a funny one, aren't they? Because they've really kind of picked up with that win over Bayern. You were thinking they're going to get clear now. But all of a sudden, fast forward a few weeks and they've lost 3 in a row again now. You know, they lost obviously against very capable opposition, you know, Frankfurt, Leverkusen, and then obviously they ran into an inform, a kind of resurgent Stuttgart side as well last week, didn't they? But again, this is another tough game. It's a different kind of game against a very pragmatic and hard to beat Augsburg side. You know, they're going to be very hard to beat, just as they've been for most of the season, but especially in 2025, they're just so hard to beat. They've only lost 2 games in 2025, and one of them was against Stuttgart and one against Bayern, where you could argue, you know, decisions really went against them in that particular one, didn't they? So, you know, they had an 11-match unbeaten run in the league, which is really a hell of an achievement for a team like Augsburg. I guess Augsburg are where Bochum would like to be, really, in many ways. They're just slap bang mid-table. You know, they're probably not going to get Europe because of that kind of lack of consistency and maybe a little bit too defensive sometimes. But I feel as though this is going to be a hard game for Bochum, but it's really one they need to win, to be honest, because, you know, there are harder games in this ultimately, but Augsburg are unbeaten on the road this season as well, which is just incredible improvement. They also have danger, man. You know, never rule out Claude Maurice. He's always got quality in him. You know, on Onyeka, when you see him live in person, you realize what a good player he is at this level too. And then obviously that rock solid defense too. Although let's not forget Sesiger, I believe, will be suspended for this one as well, which is a big. But I guess you could just bring in Kevin Schlotterbeck, who's kind of like dropped out of the team a bit, but he's another capable centre back for them. Who's going to win this one? In my view, this is sorry, I'm just going to change that to 1-1 because it was your tip for that one, Cam. Yeah, but I'm kind of tempted to go for another 1-1 in this one. Actually, I just don't think Bochum are quite going to have enough to beat this very, very rigid and tough to beat Augsburg side. But I think at the same time they can't afford to lose this one. You know, if you lose this one, it's really looking bleak again for Bochum, to be honest. And that's why I'm going to go for a 1-1. I think, you know, both sides will believe they can win this game, but it might be one where teams cancel each other out. So 1-1 for me. What about you, Cam?
Yeah, I can agree with that, to be honest, because I think that, you know, losing last week after 11 games unbeaten, it's obviously a bit of a kick to the teeth for Augsburg, isn't it? And I think not so much a hangover, but it's difficult to get over, isn't it, when you've gone that long unbeaten, really? So I just think a 1-1 draw seems fair, where Bochum need points, really. As you mentioned, they really do at this stage, with literally 5 games left now at the end of the day. And we're in a position now where it's just get yourself as close to safety as you can, and any points will matter to Bochum now. And Augsburg, I think I really like them as a team because there's not so much a square pegs in round holes sort of situation. They've got players in the correct positions that all operate under a well-organised system. And I like that. They're pragmatic and they do what a team of, what I would argue, mid-table quality should be aiming to do. Pick up points when you can, be frustrating when you can. And at times use those danger men, like you mentioned in the final third in Claude Maurice, and even Ascende's worldie against Hoffenheim the other week. You know, I like them as a team, to be honest. But I just think there'll be a bit of a sort of backlash from last weekend of trying to get back to some sort of form and maybe get themselves within a sniff of Europe again, but I can't see that happening. So I think a 1-1's fair.
Yeah, definitely, yeah. Good. And then another interesting one, Cam, I'm going to let you lead out. I mean, this is obviously a real kind of relegation 6-pointer still at this stage. And it's obviously the 2 promoted teams, isn't it? Kiel and St. Pauli.
I mean, I thought at the start of the season, this would be bigger than it actually is for both sides.
Yeah.
Because obviously it's a lot bigger for Kiel than it is for Pauli at this stage. But then if Pauli were to lose, it would drag them right back in. But I thought these would be the sides 17th and 18th at the moment. So, you know, all respect to Pauli for being where they are. I think that if they want to win this, they need to take their chances, unlike they didn't last week against Gladbach. Obviously not until late on. But I do like them. I think they've got a good energy about them. We keep mentioning all the time. Weiss helped come in January. It's been a huge impact in just everything in the final third, really. And I just think they have that bit more quality when compared to Kiel, who just... It feels like the bubble's sort of getting burst, doesn't it, really, for the hosts?
Yeah.
I must admit. So I'm going to go for a 2-0 away win.
Yeah, but we're on similar paths there. We really are, Cam. Yeah, I think if this game was maybe a month or two ago, I would have had more hope for Kiel in this game. But I just feel as though what we've seen from them the last 3 games has just been really poor, to be honest. Well, actually, to be fair, last week, that's not fair to say that. They were good last week, but still not quite enough to see out the result. You know, when you're 1-0 up with 20 minutes to go, you just got to find a way to see it out, you know, and then you're giving yourself hope going into this game. But as it happens, for me, this is 100% a last chance saloon for Kiel. I really believe that. I think lose this and you might as well not even turn up for your last 5 games, to be honest, because I think the confidence, what remains of the confidence are just completely, you know, disappear if they lose this game, to be honest. But I do think Pauli, it's been like this the whole season. You're just like, come on, lads, like put a run together and just score a few goals.
Aren't you? Yeah. You're just waiting.
And I think performances have been so consistent for me. Performances have been just good, really. But obviously a points tally of 26 from 28 games is below a point a game average, which normally would have you further down the league. But obviously the fact that the bottom 3 have kind of struggled for pretty much the whole season gives them a 4-point gap. So they'll also know they've got to win this game. It's kind of a must win for both in many ways, because if Pauli lose this and one of those other teams picks up a point, you know, it's not impossible that Bochum could win that game, for example. You know, then all of a sudden you're thinking they're going to drop into the playoff, you know. So at this stage, one result can change your whole season. Basically.
And then get a win this weekend and you're practically almost home and dry, aren't you, from a Pauli perspective?
I mean, if Pauli win and Bochum lose, for me, 7 points at this stage, you're going to need a massive turnaround to go down at that point. So, yeah, it is a big game. And I just feel as though there's too much quality in the Pauli team. And I think with a weaker defence, which, let's be honest, Kiel is a relatively weak defence, I think, Pauli will definitely create chances in this one. I think the likes of Saad, Afolayan, you know, Gilavogi are going to be able to get a goal or 2 in this game. So I'm also going to go for a 2-0 Pauli win. So, yeah, I guess it's my turn to lead out on the Klassiker, Der Klassiker, as they call it, even though Germans pretty much, that's very much an English thing to call it Der Klassiker, because to be honest, I think nobody in Germany really even considers it that big of a rivalry, to be honest. It's just, obviously the 2 teams are miles apart. The 2 fan bases don't really have like massive rivalries, so as far as I know and from what I've heard. So it's very much a kind of, you know, Bundesliga's way of trying to kind of drum up a Classico like you have in
Liverpool and United, that sort of stuff.
Yeah, it is. Yeah. But the truth is, Germany doesn't really have a Klassiker, which in some people would say it's not good, but
they're more regional, aren't they?
Yeah, definitely.
I mean, it's like you have the Sud derby with Stuttgart and Bayern. Obviously, any games between the sort of 12, you want to say giants of German football, they're all big, aren't they? When we're talking Bayern, Gladbach, or Stuttgart, Gladbach, whatever.
I mean, Köln Gladbach is as big as it gets as well, you know.
Exactly, and obviously you have the local derbies themselves then, do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's less so of just there's a one Liverpool Man United game, isn't there? Or Barcelona, Real Madrid, that sort of level. It's just, Yeah.
And normally for those big games, like, you know, the pyro is brought out and the choreo and stuff, and the fans they really do. I mean, they call them like the Traditionsverein and things like that. You know, they really do kind of get out and turn out in massive numbers for these games. So it's not really just a Bayern Dortmund thing. This could be, as you say, Köln, Gladbach, Nuremberg, Hamburg. Like, there's a number of these kind of big clubs and they turn out in big numbers for it. But anyway, that's beside the point. Obviously, one key thing we've got to mention for this one is the Champions League disaster, really, for both of these teams, in truth, Cam. I mean, what did you make of the Champions League performances? Were they as bad? Were these teams unlucky, or it just wasn't good enough?
Dortmund's was definitely as bad as it seems. They just, I mean, Guirassy missed a few chances, didn't he, in the first half? Just defensively, as we've saw a few too many occasions this season, just all over the shop, really. And obviously we're talking about Barcelona, who potentially might be the best team in the world currently. But it's disheartening to, in the first leg, go down 4-0, isn't it? And then have to bring that back to Signal Iduna Park. Bayern, I felt that it would be a frustrating night, but I didn't expect them to go on to lose, especially after equalising that late on.
Yeah.
But I thought Inter were fantastic. That first goal was just unbelievable.
Yeah, it was,
And all credit to Inter, really, because they completely stifled everything that's good about Bayern.
Mm.
And it's sort of stereotypical Italian football, isn't it? I guess in that sense. But they did a job on Bayern on the night, I must admit, and all credit to them. Whether Bayern can turn that back around in Milan is a different story, because we know it's going to be a tough place to go. It's going to be loud, it's going to be boisterous, and the hosts carry a 1-0 lead, a 2-1 lead, sorry. And Italian football teams are the most frustrating teams to break down, aren't they, in that situation?
Yeah, it's definitely an interesting time, but I agree, my analysis is similar with you. I think Inter produced a brilliant away performance, and they probably have felt a bit hard done by to concede a relatively scrappy Muller goal. But then obviously to go and win it a couple of minutes later shows a lot of character for them. But obviously from a Bundesliga perspective, it is disappointing, isn't it?
Yeah,
it's upsetting, and we're realistically looking at no Bundesliga team in the semis, barring a massive turnaround from one of those two teams, which is disappointing. But I guess it has been an interesting Champions League in many ways as well. I think it's been one of the best I can remember this year's Champions League, really. I think, a lot of people criticize the new system, but a lot of the games have been really good, I feel, this year. And some of the goals that were scored in this quarterfinals, obviously the Declan Rice free kicks, the Martinez opener from Milan, and then obviously the
Doué strike last night. Well,
the Doué and Kvaratskhelia, were both amazing goals as well. So it's been a really great season in the Champions League, but sadly not for German clubs by the look of it. But anyway, let's go on to this game. Yeah, we've got to find a tip. So obviously it's two teams that I guess will have half an eye on the second legs. Even Dortmund, they've got to hope, basically, because in the league, it's also not looking that pretty for them, is it? But realistically, if they want any form of Champions League now, Dortmund have to win this game. For me, it's as simple as that. Win or bust, effectively, for them. And if they lose, they might not even get any European football. So it's worrying. Bayern are obviously, they're going to have a big eye on, at least one eye on the second leg, because they will still believe they can turn that around. They kind of have to, because Bayern are largely judged on Champions League performance as well, rather than domestic performance. So company will be under pressure if they lose that tie. There's no question. So for me, it's probably a bigger game for Dortmund in many ways, to be honest, because, if Bayern lose, they've still got a 3-point gap plus a better goal difference. So it's really 4 points, and you'd still fancy them to see it through. But ultimately, Dortmund were really poor. And I feel as though the Schlotterbeck injury has kind of stifled them yet again, hasn't it? It's so unlucky, because they were just starting to get a bit of form, and then he gets injured, and that's just the way it's gone for them this season, isn't it? So I am going to stick with Bayern. I think the game could sadly be a bit of a kind of a disappointment in a way, because I think both of these teams will have other focuses at the moment. But I've gone for a 2-0 Bayern win. I just can't see anything from Dortmund, sadly. What do you think, Cam?
Yeah, I wholeheartedly agree. I think we've saw the soft underbelly of Borussia Dortmund too many times this season, and I just think that the defeat in the Champions League, that's going to reveal that again for me. I just can't see them bouncing back, even domestically, really. And Bayern, I actually disagree with the point you made about the Champions League being more important, because I think this season for the club company, they know the club's in a bit of a transitional period, don't they? Essentially, with the squad's not at the level that we saw Bayern sides of old be. And after having the title ripped from them last year, I think personally that winning back the Meisterschale this year was the absolute goal. Of course, a Champions League on top of that would be nice. And I'm not putting it past Bayern to go and get something at Inter, to be honest. But I still think that they've got way too much quality for Dortmund. And I think with the Champions League result added to Dortmund's miserable season in general, I can just see that, as I say, soft underbelly being revealed again, and a 2-0 win seems fair.
Definitely, yeah. So, over to you for your boys. It's worked out well, hasn't it, Cam? But obviously your resurgent Stuttgart hosting Bremen.
I think my heart says that Stuttgart should go on and win with the form that they've gained in the last couple of weeks. But Bremen are no mugs at the end of the day. We saw them be resurgent in the last few weeks, really, after their dismal run at the start of the year. But I think with Stuttgart's form plays massively into that, and sort of putting a run together ahead of the cup final at the end of the year, and possibly, as we mentioned on Monday, sneaking back into the Champions League race, possibly. So I'm going to go for a 2-1 win. I think it's going to be an entertaining game because, as I say, Bremen are no mugs. But I just think the hosts will have too much quality at the end of the day. And add momentum onto that of, a side that we would expect at the start of the year to be far better than Bremen. So I think that a 2-1 win for the host is fair.
Yeah, definitely. There's definitely an element of resurgence, definitely from both clubs, but particularly for the VfB, in my opinion. I just feel as though that 3-1 win over Leipzig has just changed the vibe again around the club.
Yeah.
And, you're looking very likely of getting your first major silverware since, the Meisterschale, in 2006-7, was it? So, I mean, it's just an enormous moment again. And winning the cup, everybody knows it'd make it a brilliant season again, basically. Even if you don't get Champions League, it'd be back-to-back fantastic seasons. And it's starting to become like another glory era, really, for the VfB after a number of years in the doldrums, really, in most of the 2000s. Well, the 2010s was a pretty bleak period for the club.
I mean, that Sebastian Hoeneß contract is the biggest thing for me. Because we're looking in the last few years that the title has been open in the last few years, really. Bayern have not been at their best this season either. And the clubs like your Stuttgart and Dortmunds and obviously your Leverkusen are now looking at it with the thought that, whilst we might not win every year, we can maybe possibly nick a title. And when you're looking at a club that's just re-signed Sebastian Hoeneß on a new contract, it can attract players because of its location, and it's a favourable club in terms of sponsors, based on size and location. You're looking at a club that can build and possibly nick a couple of Bundesliga titles every now and then and get to cup finals. And personally, I think Europa League or Conference League would be fantastic because of the fact that, they're guaranteed Europa League if they win the cup anyway, aren't they? But
definitely.
Because you're looking at competitions like the Europa League for a club like Stuttgart and Frankfurt and such, you're looking at that thinking we could win this. Whereas the Champions League, you're looking at it thinking if we can get to the quarterfinals, that's a great result. Whereas you win the Europa League, for example, then, we're talking about more attraction for players and just adding more financial power to a club that, quite frankly, has embarrassed itself financially for too long, really.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, obviously, and it's making history. At the end of the day, fans want to see trophies. As you say, that Pokal win. Like, I remember the day my team, Wigan Athletic, won the FA Cup, and every Wigan fan would say that was the best, far better than any Premier League memories that the club has. You know what I mean? That day at Wembley, and this is what fans want to see, and that's why it's frustrating that it's not so much a German problem, because in Germany clubs always take the Pokal seriously, but in England, like when you're seeing quarterfinals, you've got reserve teams. That just seems crazy to me, basically. But
I'll never forget when Wolves lost at Wembley to Watford. That will always be the worst.
Definitely. But I mean, those trips to Wembley, obviously, and in Germany with the Olympiastadion, it's just like legendary, basically. And, it's great to see. But anyway, as for the match, I agree that we're going to see a VfB win again here to continue this resurgence. I think it could be a good game, this. I think both teams will be relatively relaxed and, both teams are attacking well and scoring at the minute. So I'm actually going to go for a 3-2 in this one. I think we're going to see a good open game and a lot of chances, and it should be good to watch on Sunday afternoon. So let's finish off with another game, one that probably most people would be quite confident that the home side will win, between Eintracht Frankfurt and FC Heidenheim. But Heidenheim are just a different team now, aren't they? They really are. I mean, it's been 5-6 good performances in a row for them now, so they really are putting that consistency there. Very unlucky not to have at least another point on the board last week against Leverkusen. They deserved minimum a point from that one. But obviously Frankfurt also had disappointment against resurgent Werder, didn't they? But I feel as though that might just be a bit of a blip, to be honest, because they have been playing really well before that. Obviously tonight they've got Ajax as well, which hasn't been played. Sorry, not Ajax. I mean, they got Tottenham. The last round was Ajax, but that's going to be huge as well, and it is in London as well. So it is an away game. So there are some concerns, but I feel as though there is still ultimately a big gap in quality between these two teams, and I think Frankfurt do have the ability to rotate a little bit, and they will still want to get that Champions League through the league as well. They've never done that, incredibly. They've never got top four through league positions. So this is something that they want to break, and they want to become regulars in Champions League football. I mean, we've seen Frankfurt in the Europa League for a decade basically now, haven't we? But the only time they actually qualified for Champions League was when they won the Europa League a few years ago.
Bad, isn't it? It really is.
It really is, yeah. But they've been knocking on the door for years, but normally they don't come out on the right side of these Champions League battles in the league. So they are challenging on two fronts, but I do think they'll get a comfortable win here. I feel as though Heidenheim are due an off day, so I'm going to go for a 3-1 Eintracht win. What do you think, Cam?
Yeah, I went for 4-1 personally. I just think tonight will play a big. I mean, I've got Frankfurt to beat Tottenham anyway over 2 legs, but I also think they'll win tonight, and I think that'll be a huge boost. And then going into the weekend, we saw them lose last time out, so I just think further reaction, get back up into 3rd place of the league, and let's be real, they've been the 3rd best team in the Bundesliga this season, haven't they?
Yeah.
And I think that take a deserving win this weekend and cement that place. And agreed that Heidenheim are sort of due an off day, really, after some good performances. But it's not all too bad for them, really, as compared to what it could have been just over a month ago, really.
Yeah, I mean, this is like a bonus game for them in many ways, isn't it? Because, you don't expect them to get too much from a trip to the financial capital. But, that kind of reviews our matches for match day 29, doesn't it? So let's have a look at the table if everything goes ahead. So it would still be a 6-point gap, as Bayern Munich would take a big step really towards a title should they manage to beat obviously Dortmund. And then, Frankfurt and Mainz potentially really kind of solidifying their positions in the top 4. I mean, a 6-point and a 4-point gap respectively would be pretty good if our results come as planned. And obviously Stuttgart well and truly back into the top half and knocking on those Europa League positions as well, should they beat Werder Bremen. Looking down at the bottom, you've still got, obviously we tipped Bochum to pick up a point, but it wouldn't do that much good for them in truth, because they remain in the bottom 2 going into the last 5 games. Pauli will be looking really good if that goes ahead, with a 7-point gap potentially and overtaking Hoffenheim into 14th place as Hoffenheim continue to labour through the season. So, thanks very much for joining us, guys. I'm sure a lot of you will be watching this on repeat as well, because we were a little bit earlier today due to other plans and things like that. But thanks for joining us to those of you that watch live. And I hope you guys that watched on repeat enjoyed it as well. So, keep enjoying the sunny weather, guys. Cam, enjoy your trip over to the Bundesrepublik. And
Thank you, Mark.
We will see you on Monday for the review of match day 29. So thanks very much, guys, and see you then. Ciao, ciao.